Welcome to CityScope. I'm your host, Scott Kurland, and my guest this month is Dr. John Chetro Szivos. He has written a brand new book called On Becoming a Critical Thinker, Awakening Your Business Superpower. Dr. J.
Good to see you, Scott.
Yep.
It's been some time.
We go back.
We go back.
Yes, you were my professor.
That's right.
And then my department head.
Yeah,
So,
I was fortunate in those days.
yes. Human communications was something that you were always big on teaching.
Right.
And this book is pretty much exactly, it felt like I was in one of your classes again when I was reading it.
Oh, that's boring.
No, it wasn't. You were a wonderful professor.
Well, thank you. You were a wonderful student.
Thank you. You heard it here first.
You heard it here. Yeah.
So let's go through your book and
Sure.
the process of writing it. How long did it take you?
It didn't take me long at all. And one of the reasons for that was I was doing some corporate training. And it was a company in Massachusetts that was looking for critical thinking. So it was a long training, it was about 15 hours. When I looked at it, and as you said, I've been thinking about thinking for a long time and about people and thought. And then I thought, I have enough here for a book. And so this is the third book I've written, and I have a fourth one coming out soon. But I really started thinking this could be very helpful for people. And it sort of has a business feel to it. It says business superpower, but I think it appeals and can be applicable to everyday life. Just learning to think a little more about the things we do and say and interact with others. So,
Yeah, because critical thinking, not until reading this again, I realized it was in human communications that I learned what a critical thinker was. And can you go into that?
Yeah.
And the whole mindset?
Yeah, well, here's the thing that, kind of also gets me is, part of my history is I worked in the behavioral health care world, became an academic, still do some consulting here and there. And one of the things I'm always kind of disappointed with higher ed is the idea that all over your catalog, it's going to say the student will become a critical thinker. Syllabi are going to say critical thinking, but we never define it, and we never really talk about what it is. So years ago, after I left Fitchburg State, I was at Clark as a dean, and I was trying to change the curriculum for grad programs. So I started talking to executives in the area, particularly CEOs. What did you want your people to learn? They said, they know all the technical stuff, they just don't know how to think. And so since then, I've been kind of on this thing, and I thought it might appeal in business, but as you know, with the human communication course, I was kind of in it for everybody.
Yeah.
And so it certainly runs through that, and so it's there.
So one thing that I really liked learning about were the different mindsets, fixed and growth.
Yep.
And when I started reading, I was like, oh, I'm probably a fixed mindset person. And then the more I was reading, I'm like, no, I'm a growth. Can you talk about
Sure.
human behavior and the fact that we think we're one thing, but we discover that we are open?
Yeah, and the other part, I don't know if you got to that in the book, and I'm sure you did, I hope, is the thing that I find fascinating is our brain only takes up about 2% of our body's weight, but yet it requires 25 to 30% of our energy. So we're always looking for shortcuts. And I think sometimes we rely on fixed things. We rely on habit. I don't have to think of how to tie my shoes or drive a car or brush my teeth. And I think so many times we're fixed in that. But then there's times we definitely want to grow. And, I happen to know you're married, and marriage is about, it's more than just romance and love. It's growing as a person. It's doing that. And I think we grow in different ways, in different places, in different spots. I think the key element is, what do I learn from it? So if we have a falling out with a friend, something's not going right at work, okay, there's something to be learned here. And how do I change it? How do I get into that growth mindset where I become a different person tomorrow, a much brighter person, or at least a person capable of rolling with the punches and adjusting?
Yeah, because that's the lesson that I took from the book is being able to adapt.
Great.
Being able, because you mentioned that it's for, business superpower, but reading this could be any superpower.
I think so.
It's more of a life lesson. It's more of, how do I make myself more approachable? How can I grow? How can I become a better person by doing A, B, and C?
Well, it's transformation, and I think I might have had you as a student when this was happening. I was in a series of lectures at a medical school in China, and the room I would go in had these beautiful Chinese wooden carved characters. And then finally I asked the interpreter one day, I said, what does that say? And he said, it's the hall of mental cultivation.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it just struck me that that's what we're trying to do. We're really trying to change our brain, our outlook. We're really trying to cultivate. And the Chinese have a better way of saying it than just classroom. And so I think it's about transformation for all of us. Now, there are some business things in there. There's a bunch of models that business people could use as heuristics. But the first few chapters, and I talk a lot about transformation. How do we change? How do we practice? We're always in the process of, if it's in the title, unbecoming something. And I think when we have curiosity, we want to be better at it, we're willing to listen to the things we don't do well, we've got a chance at transforming who we are and changing our brain. Our neurology changes as well. In the last few years since I've had you as a student, one thing I find incredibly exciting, I talk about there is the triune brain and the kludge. So the triune brain is a theory that goes back to the early 60s, and that we don't have one brain. We have three. We have the reptilian brain that's fight, flight, or freeze. We have the mammalian brain, which is about how we develop empathy and compassion and jealousy. And then we have the neocortex. Here's the thing. The word kludge is a Navy term for a bad workaround. Our brain is not well integrated. And at times, we get an override. I'm married too, so my wife says something I don't feel like doing. The reptilian brain wants to snap into, leave me alone.
That's where the term comes from, my lizard brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so my mantra to myself is use your neocortex. Use that other part of the brain, because we do get overrides from these brains that we don't want. I think if you and I were, could play Back to the Future and came back 50,000, went ahead 50,000 years, you might see that brain develops into something where people really do know how to use the neocortex. Because if you follow some of the things in here and you practice it, you will get better at it. The great news about critical thinking, you don't need a degree in philosophy. You don't need to go back to college. Anyone can become a critical thinker, and that's incredibly good news. It's just some of us don't know how.
Yeah, it seemed like reading the book that the whole, idea of learning is the world becomes your classroom. The office becomes your classroom. When you're out with family, friends, they are the teachers. You're learning
Absolutely.
from them.
Yeah, that's well said. I really like that, and I think every opportunity we have, I haven't seen you in a few years, seeing you today, there's something to be said about that. And
Yeah.
there's a positive psychologist, Barbara Fredrickson. She talks about something I love. They're called micro moments.
Yep.
Little teeny tiny things that are really good, and we just let them go.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, you and I haven't seen each other in years. That's a win today.
Yeah.
And it's like, we get to laugh, smile, do this fun TV thing. I'm sure we'll say goodbye and say, hey, hopefully we'll say goodbye. That was pretty good. Which I'm sure we will. But those micro moments are moments we can learn from, and we could build on those micro moments and make them bigger. But it takes a different mindset. What is it, April 5th today, and there's a couple inches of snow on the ground. We could sit there and complain. Okay. Well, snow this time of year is great fertilizer for the plant, so we'll get prettier flowers next May. It's how we look at it and how we can shift our interpretation. In fact, I was just reading something, the word in Sanskrit, bodhi, B-O-D-H-I, it really means changing our perspective so that the world becomes radiant instead of becoming painful. And I think that's what happens in micro moments. I think that's what happens, like you said it so well, going out with friends, going to work, all these have moments where we can see the world different and see it anew. And that's exciting.
Yeah. From the beginning to the end of the book, you basically take us on a journey. And was that always your intent, or was it basically to get the information out there?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the publisher wanted so many pages, so I had to pad a few things in there. If I had to do it over, I'd probably take a few things out. But I like the idea of a journey, and I think that it's a great way of doing it. In fact, I'm toying with I'm working on a book now called Speak Like a Leader. But after that's done, I have another one I want to do, and I'm kind of thinking something about path or the Iliad when Odysseus is sailing around the world.
Yeah.
And really what it is, it's reflections of my own life that I'm not sure that mine's that any different and special, but things I learned from, that I didn't see at the time. I was too young. I was too, one of the chapters is called Folly. It's like goofy things I did that really, if I had to do them over again. But even now, that hindsight, it starts to show me like, I'll never do that again, or I'll change it. And I think that's important. I think it's really important that we think of our journeys that we go through and that we take something away rather than just look at the experiences, get up in the morning, go to work, come back. Okay, you can do that. Or I'm building something here. There's got to be some meaning in it.
Well, the one thing that I love the most in the book is you talking about your experiences. My favorite one was the house, the purple house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and when I was reading that, I was like, oh, purple house, that's cool. Like, I think the little stories you add makes it more relatable. It makes
good.
it easier for people to try and, as you say, reset your brain.
I think we're storytelling animals, and I think we learn more through story. I think you sat through my class, and a lot of times people that don't like my classes will say, well, he stopped telling stories. But they're intentional.
Yeah.
Rather than PowerPointing students to death or going off to a corporate training and PowerPointing those people to death, I think when we tell a story, we're more likely to remember it, or we relate or said, oh, I have a story like that. The purple house was, back when I was at Fitchburg State, I used to go by this purple house. I was like, why would anyone do that to a beautiful colonial? And it did get changed, just someone bought it and it changed. Yeah. But then I realized, who am I to say that? Maybe purple was symbolic to the people that live there. Maybe it's their favorite color. We all live in differences, and I think that also says something about our need to adjust and be tolerant and appreciative of others. That's there, and I'm glad you like the stories.
So what are next steps with this book? I know you were going to the London Book Fair. Did that already happen?
That already happened.
How was that?
Okay. It's pretty overwhelming. It's a feeding frenzy, to be absolutely honest, but it was it was exciting. The book's up for a couple awards, so I'll find out one later this month. It's going to an Audible book pretty soon.
Oh, that's great.
It should be done on April 7th, and then I don't know how long it takes to prep it for that. Some podcasts are coming up. There's a chance it might be featured in some of the big national publications, Bloomberg, Forbes.
Oh, that's great.
A few of those. Yeah, I was talking to my publicist this morning, and he's pretty confident he could get me there as well as Morning Edition. He's hoping for Morning Edition, so am I, which I always listen to that. So, it's doing very well.
And you came to us first. I appreciate that.
Well, it's funny because I thought, they call this the low-hanging fruit. Go into your own geographic area and see who you know and try to push it a little bit. You do something like this, does it sell a book? Maybe, maybe not. It sure is fun talking about it and getting the message out. And, so and it's funny, it's wild. The reception from local things have not been as good as the national. So what they call that, the philosopher in his own land is never appreciated, And, I'm on 2 podcasts during this month that are nationally known, and
that's amazing.
Yeah, I know, but I haven't been able to do a local one yet. Such is life.
It's a wonderful book. I appreciate you coming down here and being on the show. The book is On Becoming a Critical Thinker, Awakening Your Business Superpower. Dr. J, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, you as well. It's great. It's great seeing former students, and look at you, you're all grown up with a real job now.
Yeah, thank you. So remember, next time, if you have a book or a business or just want to get the word out about an event that is happening in the community, go to www.lemonster.tv. And you can contact us there. For CityScope, I'm your host, Scott Kurland. Have a great day.